How hard did you push it till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, MuniciPals? This is not Big C, even though we are going to be honest, as always. But here with friend of the pod, Nick, a couple weeks post cookout, and I have not picked up a club. I don't think, Nick, you have either. But yeah, man, how's it going? You still, I appreciate you sending your voicemail in after the cookout, but if you're still kind of buzzing off that trip.
Oh, dude, it was such a blast. I mean, I'm sure that excitement came across in my little message that I sent for that. Yeah. But it was a great time. I think for 3 or 4 or 5 days afterwards, all I could think about was the tournament and meeting the guys and playing with the different guys and the course and everything. It was just such a wonderful golf experience. I think one that I don't know. One we could use more of in the game. One I would love to do again. I can't wait for next year. It took, I think, my appreciation for golf to a whole other level. So. Yeah, it was a blast, dude.
Yeah, and you had the whole 9 yards of this is not meant to be a blow by blow of Nick's singles match, but I mean, Nick had for lack of a better term, a rules infraction. To be clear, Nick was not cheating or something like that. On 15, Nick's ball moved in the hazard and he hit it, which is a forfeiture of hole, or at least that's what, when they Googled it, that's what it said, which, instead of being 2 up, he went to even. And then he had Steven, who, when I said, he made that amazing 40-foot breaking putt on 18, I was like, dude, that was amazing. And Steven just gives me this look and goes, I didn't make a putt outside of 8 feet this whole trip. But that's kind of the point of I just think there's none of that happens without match play, right? Like the ebbs and flows. And I know that at least for kind of our friend group up here, I know that Hussey and I have agreed that every time we go play, we're going to pull out the gin handicap and play. We're not going to be probably as serious, but me and him are going to play a match against each other every time we tee it up together. And it makes me more excited to get out there with him, because it's always fun to kind of just go out there and what'd you shoot? But it's pretty fun to go out there and have no idea what you shot. Also, it's did you win your match? I don't care what you shot. Did you win?
100%. I think match play. We've played matches in the past together.
Yeah, really competitive ones.
Really competitive ones, and I'm certainly no stranger to match play. That's been a big part of how I've gotten into golf. When we had our buckets and blues matches with the 4 of us every Saturday morning, 2-on-2. It's been a great introduction to golf, and I think part of the reason why I love it so much, I think if I had played straight stroke play from the beginning, I probably wouldn't like it as much. But I do want to give a shout out to Steven. You mentioned he did win the matchup with that crazy putt on 18. And it was a lot of fun playing with him. First of all, we played the morning round together on Saturday. We played against each other, and then I played him in singles on Sunday. And it was fun to see. We boboth played better on Sunday, which is perfect. I mean, you want to finish the weekend better than
finish strong.
Right. You want to play singles better than you played your 4-ball match. But it was a lot of fun playing somebody who's close to my handicap. I gave Steven 3 strokes. I think when you and I played our matches at the field, which seems like forever ago,
I gave you 17.
You were giving me 17 strokes, and it's a different ball game. It's way more interesting when you're a lot more evenly matched, and so it's. I don't know. That was a new experience to me. I'd never given somebody strokes, which was kind of cool, and I hadn't played somebody who was my, we'll say, disability level like that before. So that was the whole experience was a blast. And Steve and I had a great match, went right down to the wire, and he won it with that, I don't know, 25, 30, 40-foot putt on the 18th, which that's all you can ask for in a good close match. So that was a great time, man.
And I think the other thing match play does is it really gets you to remember moments, right? In a way that simply doesn't happen with stroke play, right? If Steven's playing for, it's all about the stories. That's what was so, I think, invigorating every evening after that, was being able to be give me everybody had 2 or 3 things in each of their matches where it's just tell me the story. I don't care what you shot. I don't even necessarily care if you won. Just tell me the 2 or 3 moments that were that was crazy, right? That was crazy. In my match with Big C, on number 3 or on number 2, I miss a putt I probably should have made. So we tie the hole. Number 3, I basically yip a putt to give away a hole that I should have won. And then I'm going to number 4, the downhill par 5, kill my driver, got 190 yards in, just, hoping to make birdie. Big C hits it into basically an animal hole. I don't know why he didn't take relief. Sticks his wedge in, like literally in the ground, and the ball goes to 6 inches, and he makes birdie. And I lose the hole, and he hits a bad drive, hits it in an animal hole, and has an amazing wedge. But like those stories are like what's so fun to kind of stick with you. So I hope that you keep that going in San Diego with some of your friends down there, which is a perfect segue to, you've now got your San Diego resident card. We've had you on to talk about San Diego golf before, but I really want to focus on Torrey. I know everyone's thinking of Big Boy Torrey and Torrey South, but I've heard a lot about Torrey North and kind of the playability and the conditions. So really just kind of wanted to do our usual, rate, conditions, layout, amenities, the usual stuff, but also just hear about your experience at Torrey and how it's been. I think you said you played Torrey North 2 or 3 times, you said?
Yeah, something like that, 2 or 3, something like that.
Yeah, enough to have a perspective, because I think you said Torrey South, you played the 18th hole. Not that this discounts your experience, but I think you said the last couple holes you were playing with glow in the dark ball, so you probably need to go have the full experience at South. But it sounds like you have enough to kind of have an informed opinion about North.
Yeah, I think I have enough to have an informed opinion about the South too, and my opinion is I'm not jonesing to get back out there and play the 17th and 18th with regular balls. It was brutal, and it kicks your ass. So we'll get into all that, but I have played Torrey North a little bit more, and I really feel actually like I'm on here speaking in defense of Torrey Pines. I can't remember who it was, but somebody at the cookout when I was just talking to him on the first tee. I cannot remember for the life of me who it was.
Might have been Fabian. Fabian, I know was out there in the last 6 weeks or so.
Might have been Fabian. I truly can't remember. But someone asked me about Torrey, and I think before I could finish my answer about my experiences there, they'd already jumped in but said, "Oh, I hate that course. It's so repetitive, same thing over and over." And I get it. I totally get that, especially the South course. It's a valid criticism. But I do think that Torrey, especially the North course, has a special place down here in public golf and in the broader context of public golf. And I feel like I have to come here and onto this podcast and sort of defend Torrey as a San Diego resident and somebody who can play there relatively often. And I have seen what the course offers, especially what it offers in the world of public golf. I think it's a special place. And so I know there's a lot of hate out there for Torrey, and a lot of that is deserved. But it does have a lot of redeeming qualities, and it is an important golf course down here that I think just gets dismissed too often because the national media sees a South course once a year and kind of poo-poos it as boring, repetitive, and just basically a bad use of the land that it sits on. So my goal today is to hopefully give everybody a different perspective on the course and encourage you to come out and play it next time you're down in San Diego.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing too, and I'm guilty of this as anybody, is sometimes for those of us like us who live in the fried egg, no laying up, golf media vortex, like I think sometimes we have to differentiate that. Is Torrey potentially the best and most interesting test for Jon Rahm and Colin Morikawa? No. But does that mean that it's like a bad golf course or, to your point, not a part of the community? No. And I think those things can be divorced, because I definitely know I find myself sometimes, parroting takes from, again, the fried egg. But I think to your point, like it's helpful to hear kind of a different perspective and to know too. I mean, the South has more renown because of the kind of championship pedigree, but I feel like oftentimes the courses that really test these guys are not courses we should be playing. I mean, we're recording this the Thursday of, Southern Hills and the PGA at Southern Hills. I texted you today. I mean, the text was about something else, but Jon Rahm hit a 404-yard drive on a 656-yard par 5. Like, there's nothing about that I can understand. I can't process that. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not golf that I play. So I think they're really bringing this down to like how people would experience it, especially at the North course, which is more of like a course for me and you. Super helpful. So before we kind of dive in though, like tell me the experience. Like, well, also too, the first time you played it, I imagine you had your residence card, and even gives people some insight into how was it getting your residence card.
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than I had thought. So I delayed getting my residence card because I'm an idiot. I didn't get it until January of this year, thinking that it was an annualized card, so that you buy it in January and you use it for the entirety of 2022. That's incorrect. It's 12 months from the day you buy it. So I waited way too long to get mine. But I think it's similar to what you guys do up there in the Bay, where you have to basically show proof of residency. So I think I used my driver's license, but you can use, I don't know, you can use like a utility bill or something to get your residence card. Super easy, $25, no problem. Well worth it, because I can get out
$25.
$25 for the card for the year.
Dude, ours is at Harding. Well, I mean, it's for Harding. I mean, no offense. Again, sorry, Juan, Mayor of Lincoln. I mean, it includes cheaper fares at Glen Eagles and Lincoln, but the point is really for Harding, and I think it's $170. I want to say for 18 months. It's very expensive.
18 months
compared to that.
No, it's still crazy. And to be very clear, our residence card is not just for Torrey; it's also for Balboa, and it's also for Mission Bay, and so it gives you access or better prices and earlier access to booking tee times at those different courses. But I mean, the experience is neat. So I've done it a few different ways. I've either booked tee time well in advance, and I think you can book tee times at Torrey Pines up to 90 days in advance. I think it's from 4 to 90 days in advance. You pay a $30 booking fee. If you're a resident, you pay a $30 booking fee per person in your group. So for instance, I'm booking around at Torrey. Our buddy Jake is coming into town in July. I'm booking around at Torrey for us, and I'm going to end up spending $120 in booking fees. So it's not cheap to book in advance. That is a big drawback. But there are cheap options for getting on. The last time I played at Torrey North, I showed up on a Saturday morning at like 6:15 or 6:30, and they have a wait list. So I just walked into the golf shop, put my name on the wait list. I was the 4th person in line that particular Saturday, and I was out at 8:00. So it was a really nice morning. I woke up, I put my name on the list, I got some range balls, went and hit some range balls, and then they have a little lodge right there that's part of the resort that's attached to the golf course. And I sat down outside next to the fireplace and had a nice hot cup of coffee and sat by the fire, waited till my name was called. And they called my name at 8, rolled up to the first tee, and
old course style.
Had a blast. It really is, and it's a good way to do it. If I'm a single, that's how I'm probably always going to do it, because I'm trying to avoid that booking fee. Because if you book, I think you can book for free like 3 days in advance, but there just aren't any tee times. So they do have those options, right? And anybody can do that. And that residence card that we talked about, I mean, it gives you a huge discount. I paid, I think, $60 for that 8 a.m. tee time at Torrey North on a Saturday morning. That was like a month or two ago. It's fantastic, and it's well worth that. Torrey North and Torrey South are worth the residence rates every day of the week, no questions asked. Once you get to the out-of-towner rates, that's where it gets pretty expensive, and that's where you start thinking twice about, is this golf course worth it? And that's up to every individual, right? I think the North course for an out-of-towner is like $165. I think the South course is $260, somewhere in that range. I can tell you, South course is not worth that, in my opinion, unless you have to hit the shots that Tiger hit in 2008 or hit the putts that Rahm hit in the U.S. Open last year. If you have to do that, then go ahead and enjoy your time and take your pictures. It's going to be slow. There's lots of tourists playing these courses, and that's another point, I guess, that it does get crowded. So if you don't get out early, you can have a really long round out there.
Yeah.
But if you're paying the residence rate, it's well worth it. Our buddy Jake's coming down. I convinced him to play the North course with me for $160.
Sweet.
If you're going to play it once, I think $160 is okay to drop on it. It's beautiful. The course is in great condition. It's a lot of fun. So I do think there's a place and a time to pay that fee.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound very similar to Harding's. I just looked. It's $118 for an 18-month card, which is more expensive, quite a bit more expensive than you were
Mhm.
talking about. And the other thing that's kind of crazy too is this is not a Harding pod, but they've done dynamic pricing. So like, it's also cool to hear though that it's $60 for you on a Saturday, because I think as a resident, if you're to get like one of those primetime Saturday tea times, you're still talking about close to $100 with the resident card. And I feel very similar about Harding. I think that the hate for Harding has gone too far. Like, everyone's like, Presidio is real. It's like, I don't know how to define what real golf is, like real San Francisco golf. It's like, I guess the hills, Harding is flat. Greens aren't as interesting, but I feel the same way. If I go out there at like 4 o'clock during the end of the workday, it's like $47 to play Harding like Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and like totally worth it. And to your point about hitting the shots, like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I know you're gonna do it at some point. When you get up on 16, like Colin Morikawa has made 16 at Harding, a destination hole. It just, you get up there and it just feels a little bit different.
I don't. I'm not that excited for the rest of Harding Park, but when I do get out there to play it, I cannot wait to hit that tee shot on 16.
Totally.
Like, driver, no questions asked.
100%. Yeah, just don't do what I do and pull it over into the trees, because like
Exactly.
it is really not fun from the trees when you're over there. But okay, so to get to kind of our usual stuff, let's start off. I mean, you've covered rate. I think that's helpful. Makes a bunch of sense. Tell me about the condition. I mean, I imagine it's really good, but like, would love to hear about condition on North.
Yeah, so I've played, for context, I played the South Course back in December. They were a month out from the Farmers, and the rough was, they were growing the rough up, and it was pretty crazy. They actually had a local rule when they start growing the rough up.
This is sick.
That you have 60 seconds to find a ball that's off the fairway, and if you can't find your ball within 60 seconds, you get a free drop from where you think it went in, just to the rough. I mean, it's like it's
maybe a sign that we're doing something wrong with rough. If like that's what you're the local rule.
Yeah, got to challenge John Rahm. But the North Course I've played more recently. I played in the spring post Farmers, and it's a very well conditioned course. None of it is fantastic. I can only compare it to the best conditions I've played in, which I would say was probably the Robert Trent Jones Trail that we played a couple years ago. I've mentioned on here
Super
before.
Good. Yeah.
Conditions there are pure. And you know what? This course gets a lot more play than those Robert Trent Jones courses do, and it shows. I mean, the greens are a little bit more pockmarked. They're in good shape. They roll pretty true, but they're a little bit bumpier. The fairways are in good shape. They're not in fantastic shape. They're not Augusta, but they're in pretty good shape for a Muni. And that's what you have to think about this course as. It is a Muni. Like, it gets, I don't even know how many rounds or hundreds of thousands of rounds a year it gets, but it's a lot. I mean, it's jam-packed every single day. So for what it is, as a Muni that gets that much play, wall-to-wall, tee times, it's in pretty good shape, and it's certainly worth the money that you're going to pay to play, especially on the north side. And I think they do a really good job with what they have there.
Yeah. And selfishly, I think they sort of have to, because yes, it's a Muni, but I think the thing that I do love about the model, similar to Harding, is using out of town money to keep rates low for locals and keep conditions high is wonderful, right? This is a weird, it's going to be a weird segue for a second, but it's similar to, we've learned about Pasatiempo is about to do kind of a pretty big renovation, whatever the terminology is. And they said on the Fried Egg Pod that, $0, zero of the dollars are going to be paid by members for that, which is crazy, because every one of those places, normally it's like you have to get member buy-in for huge changes. But how are they paying for that? Well, when we go out there, eventually go out there, Nick, and we pay our foursome, they're going to get $1,400 from our tee time, right? That's how they fix, like, it's literally $355 a person, $1,400 every single 9 minutes going out the door, unless, like, that's how you pay for it. So again, a weird analogy,
but fucking money, dude. That's so much fucking money.
It's this is not a pasta pod, but
It's
I
not.
think we were texting about some of us were texting earlier that it's the one cost that like you say thank you so much for letting me out. Like yes, it's a lot, but I love it. The point is, I love it when they're letting people play who might not normally have access to come on and kind of supplement to make, like, I'm happy to pay a little bit more, a lot more to make it where you can get out there for $60. And that's really cool. And I think that hopefully, I'm curious, did you get any sense of like community out there? I know that may sound weird, but like, courses do have different feels to them. And hopefully the fact that it is sort of a muni, like, I'm curious if you felt that. I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, I think that really depends on who you play with, right? There are certainly the pro shop staff. I don't know. They're like every other golf course you've ever been to. I would say there's nothing outstanding there. But I did play the last time I played at Torrey. I played with one guy who's a member of the men's club there, and it's something I've looked into as well. But it's $500 for the year, and they can't, because there are so many members of the Torrey Pines men's club. It's really hard to get into the tournaments that they host and get access to those. So I think it's like a draw. I think there's like a draw that you have. I don't know. I'm certainly no expert on it, but it's you're not guaranteed to play in their events if you're part of the men's club. So you're paying $500 for the chance of getting in and playing occasionally. So it's really not really much of a benefit there. That said, the guy I played with, who is a member of the men's club, he plays there like once a week, and he finds a way to get on. So, it can be done. I guess, I don't know. That probably doesn't answer your question about community very well. I don't know. It's a muni. It's probably has as much community as any other muni you play. Maybe even less because it is a tourist destination. There are so many tourists around who play every day. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's dive a little bit into layout. Like, Torrey North to me is, I have no idea. You sent me the picture of the cool downhill par 3 that everyone seems to take a picture of, but give me some thoughts on kind of layout. Because again, for me, I don't even know what the course, couldn't point a hole, don't know anything about it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't really unless you were to pay super close attention to the farmers on Thursday and Friday. So, when you come to Torrey, everybody knows the South course because of the U.S. Opens and the farmers. But the North course is actually it hosts rounds on the tour for the farmers on Thursday and Friday. So it is a tour course too. So that's pretty cool. Just to check that box if that's what you're into. Layout, I think it was actually redone, I don't know, 5-6 years ago by Tom Weisskopf. I think he flipped the nines. We're not going to get into that, but and I certainly didn't play it before the redesign. But what's interesting about Torrey North is it actually seems to play along the ocean more than the South course. So you get more access and more vistas of the beach, certainly of La Jolla Cove, which is a little further south. It's very pretty. You get some gorgeous views of La Jolla Cove, especially on the back nine. But you play to the ocean more, it seems like, on the North course than the South. The South has that hole, I think it's number 4, that plays along the cliff edge right on the beach. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot of play right on the edge of the beach. Whereas on the North, you probably have 5 or 6 holes that play to it or along it or from it, I guess. So it is, in my opinion, I think it's a prettier 18. You have better vistas. I think the best view on the entire course is when you're walking up the fairway on it's either 15 or 16. Walking up the fairway, you can turn around when you get to the green, and you get this spectacular view of La Jolla Shores, La Jolla Cove, the beach. It's really fantastic. Sometimes you get the little paragliders taking off from the glider port. They'll fly right along next to you. That's kind of cool too. So I think maybe that's not so much layout, just setting. But in terms of the golf course itself, it's a little bit shorter than the South, definitely more gettable. There are some short par 4s you can get after, some shorter par 5s that are reachable. For an amateur golfer like myself, it's way more fun because you really feel like you can score on the North course. I think there's a hole, I'm going to get the number wrong. It's probably the 8th hole, 7th or 8th hole. It's a short par 4. Some guy I was playing with was telling me that Bryson drove it with a 3-wood last year or 2 years ago. Like, there are gettable holes in the North course. Those don't exist on the South course. So it's. I think it has some more interesting holes. You mentioned that par 3 that's super far, super downhill. I couldn't tell you the yardage, but it's seriously the shot is like 60 yards down a hill with this gorgeous view in the background. I've sent you the picture. A pretty wild shot to hit. But the greens are also more interesting. I think that's really what makes the North Course stand out beyond the vistas and the length, is that the greens are way more interesting to play than the South Course. And I'm going to continue to contrast those two. But the South Course, we can give a real quick highlight of that course because it's all the same. I mean, every green is 4 or 5 tiers, very small pinnable locations on those tiers. And you have bunker left and right in front of the green. That's every hole except for one. I think only has one bunker in front.
That's crazy. It just sounds so not interesting.
It's so repetitive. And the North Course is great because it's not that. Because I think the coolest and hardest green out there actually doesn't have any bunkers in front of it, which is shocking for Torrey. It's actually more of a turtleback green, kind of like number 7 at Sweetens that we've talked about a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a more variety in the greens, some more interesting slopes. They're not all just 4 or 5 plateaus separated by these short slopes like the South Course. So it makes for a more interesting round of golf. It's prettier, greens are better, a little bit more gettable. I'm no architecture expert, so I'm not going to go too much into like the actual layout of every hole. But I can tell you, just as an amateur golfer who's played both sides, it's way more fun to play the North Course.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's hard to say because again, I feel like even though this pod is supposed to be about Torrey North, I think Torrey South just inherently gets baked in. But yeah, I don't know if it's like the length where. Actually, I mean, we can just kind of unpack this together. Why do you think there is the fixation on South? Like, why do you think that from being out there, like, why is that the U.S. Open venue? Because it's longer? Like, if North were longer, is that where they'd play? Or just, again, I know you don't know the answer to this. From being out there, like, why do you think that's the case?
I think because it is longer, I think it was built to be the championship course. So it's longer. It was designed to be harder, and it is several steps harder. I don't have the course ratings in front of me, but it is much harder than the North Course.
But why is that? Why is it harder?
Because of because of how they make those greens and the length. So when they play the tournaments there, obviously they grow the rough up. That doesn't help. Certainly doesn't help amateurs like myself. But those greens that I talked about, they're all the same, every single one, and they're really hard. They have bunker left, bunker right in front. Some of them have more around the back and on the sides, but every green, save for one, has bunker left, bunker right in front, small little area to run it up if you're trying to play on the ground. And then every green has 4 or 5 tiers, and they're all the same. There's no variety in that. And the tiers, like the shelves, are very small. So your landing area is sometimes no more than 6 or 7 yards by 6 or 7 yards. And if you don't hit that landing area, it's very hard to 2-putt. So it's very, and every hole is like that. It's very repetitive. So at the risk of myself sounding repetitive, I don't know why that is the test that they've chosen to present to the pros, but that is what they've decided is the best championship layout. And so that's what they go with, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and also, too, to go back to the architecture point, there is sort of the juxtaposition, seemingly, of, what kind of modern golfers like us think is interesting versus kind of what they've done. And again, super interesting just having this podcast on the day that we've spent ODing on, the PGA at Southern Hills. I texted you earlier, on that long hole, John Rahm hits a 404-yard drive, hits a really bad approach shot, but because of short grass, the ball almost ends up on another green, chips it on in 3 putts. And at a place like Torrey, that can't happen because the ball is just, I think like Andy Johnson has said, it's like Velcro, right? It's just going to sit there. And that's one of the only reasons I don't like playing Harding, same idea, is like if your ball striking is off and you're missing the greens, like I've been there sometimes, it's literally just like, okay, the ball's like 3 yards off the green. I'm going to open up my 60 degree and kind of swipe underneath here and hope that it rolls out to the desired length. Like there's no creativity. You can't play a bump and run from that. You can't really do anything. It's just open it up, ball's going to stop. Like watching John, it kind of made sense there when I watched John Rahm hit a bad shot and like it was careening so far. Like John Rahm had to wait to hit his chip shot because the guy was putting on the other green and he didn't want to like be disruptive. But yeah, that makes sense because it's like it's a lot more of like potting, right? It's like, can you hit your drive in a place where you can kind of attack, and then can you execute a 7x7 approach shot and then make the putt?
It's see target, hit target. If you don't hit target, you're fucked, and it's not interesting. There's no thinking that has to be done on the south course. There's maybe a little bit more thinking on the north, but it's not interesting golf. I mean, it's Billy Bell Jr. It's his design. Of the two bells, he's the worst one, right? And it's been renovated by Reese Jones a couple of times, like several times renovated by Reese Jones. And, he's got a terrible reputation amongst golfers in our circle. So I don't know. It is what you think. I do want to push back on one criticism of the course that it doesn't use.
Please.
I've heard several times that the course doesn't use the coastline well, or that the course doesn't bring you right up to the edge of the cliffs. And I think there are some valid points to that criticism, especially on the south course. They could potentially route the course better so that you're playing to the coast more often, or you get bigger views of the ocean more often. They could probably route it differently, but you can't. The way that those cliffs, I think they're sandstone cliffs, so you really can't get very close to the edge because they crumble and fall all the time. You and I have done that hike. That's just north of the golf course. And this is actually, as a quick sidebar, if you don't want to pay for Torrey Pines and if you want to play public golf in San Diego, but you don't want to pay for Torrey Pines, there are other courses I can point you to that are just as fun courses. But if you want to get those same views, you go to the Torrey Pines State Park or Torrey Pines State Reserve. It's just north, literally borders the golf course. And it's a beautiful hike. You get these gorgeous vistas. You can actually walk right out to the edge of the cliffs and then walk back along the beach to the parking lot. It's a great hike. You and I have done it. I've done it several times when people come from out of town. Well worth it. I highly recommend it. Torrey Pines State Reserve. And that's a great way to get the same views you would on the golf course without actually paying for the Torrey Pines foreigner rate. So that's a criticism I've heard, is that the golf course doesn't play close enough to the cliffs and give you those really like intense views of the ocean because you're like standing right on top of it. And I think that is just down to the fact that those cliffs are sandstone and they fall and they erode all the time. So you can't build like that close to the edge because the edge is going to creep back fairly quickly and fairly often. So, for the people who think that the course doesn't get to the cliff edge often enough or doesn't give you those incredible vistas right at the edge often enough, I think that's probably the reason why. So maybe there's a sense of Torrey there.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, did you have a favorite hole on North? Is there one that, I love, we're always a sucker here for drivable par fours, but kind of curious if there's a hole that stands out to you.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to have to look it up. I think it's 13 or 14. It's a hole, it's par four. It's not drivable, but it's par four. And it's actually really fun the first time you play it because you can't see the green. The fairway falls away from you so you're playing towards the ocean. The fairway falls away from you, and it falls away steeply enough halfway down to the hole. You can't see the green. You can't see the pin. You kind of have to know where it is. It's a slight dogleg left. If you hit your drive in the fairway, you get to the crest of the fairway right in the middle, and you can see the green sort of open up in front of you. It almost looks like an infinity green with the ocean behind it. And it's a fun hole because you can actually play it right along the ground. The second shot is downhill into the greens, probably 30 or 40 yards below you on that second shot, maybe 20, 30 yards below you on that second shot. So if you want to play along the ground, you can do that as well. You can run it in to the green. The green's very receptive that way. It's fun because it's a gettable four in that if you hit a good enough drive, your approach shot is not that difficult, and you get these gorgeous views of the ocean as you're playing into this green. I think it's 13 or 14. I'd have to look that up. I didn't come prepared, but that's a really fun one.
Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. And then I guess last thing we haven't really covered, sort of mentioned the fireplace and the coffee, but how are the amenities? I imagine probably pretty good for what it is.
It's a public golf course, right? So they have like I don't know. It's a nice public golf course. They have a huge clubhouse. If merch is your thing, you can go in and spend $500 or $600 in the merch store, no problem. I've got a head cover from Torrey Pines that I really like. It was only like $40. So huge pro shop with lots of merch. Actually, one of the coolest things about it is it's got some of the best golf course food I've ever had. Their breakfast burrito is out of this world good. Like, that's
so key to have. You can get something good at the course.
I would go to Torrey Pines and just get the breakfast burrito if I was in the area. It's that good. So,
wow,
I get that probably every time I go. Really good. So,
and you're not a schlub when it comes to breakfast burritos. You've got an opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I live in San Diego, right? We got fantastic burritos all over the place here, and I've got 4 or 5 places within a mile of my house that are best burritos you could ever want. And Torrey Pines breakfast burritos kind of stand up to them. So, food's really good. I couldn't tell you the drink prices. They're probably average. I don't really remember. I've had a few. But yeah, it's fine. It's a public course. The bathrooms out on the course are like, cinder block bathrooms because it's a public course. If you go eat at the lodge, which is connected to the clubhouse, like where the resort is, I think you can get like really nice food there. It's very expensive. I haven't actually eaten there myself, but decent facilities. The putting greens, they've got like 3 or 4 practice putting greens, which is really cool. And then the driving range is like very small. You're hitting off of mats. You're hitting shitty, like worn out. What the reduced distance, is that what they're called? What are the shitty driving range balls called?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're they don't really go anywhere.
The range, you walk by the range. The range is bad.
The range is bad. The range is bad. It's not. I don't know. I guess they're putting their money elsewhere. But overall, it's a great facility, and it's a good facility for public golf in San Diego. So,
yeah. No, it's really good to hear a perspective. Again, I think you can go find many podcasts of, just shitting all over Torrey. But yeah, I just wanted to have you on because, again, we've talked about it and getting a different perspective from a local who's played there enough to know. But yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And at some point, I don't know when, but at some point I'll definitely pony up. Pony up. There you go. Nick went to SMU for all you people out there.
Pony up, baby.
Also hashtag Bryson.
Or Harry Higgs. Yeah, or Harry Higgs and Payne Stewart. Probably better dudes. I don't know about Payne Stewart, but better dudes than Bryson. Harry Higgs for sure.
Harry Higgs with the Dude Wipes logo, which is just also a little bit of a tough scene out there.
Baby. But... Gotta make that money. Got one life to live.
Amen. And Harry Higgs looks like he's certainly living it. That's for sure.
I think one before we close, totally. If it hasn't been clear, like my recommendation, if you're coming from out of town, if you don't care about hitting the tiger shots or hitting the putts that John Rahm hit down the stretch at the U.S. Open, like play the North Course. You get better views. It's better value. The course is more interesting. The greens are better. That's by far and away my recommendation. And it's $165. And if you have the means, it's probably worth it. I don't think the South Course, unless you really need to hit those shots or see where Tiger walked, unless you need to do that, it's not worth the $260 it's going to cost you. Don't do it. Play the North Course. It's you'll have more fun.
Well, and also, too, you've given us some great suggestions in the past where it's like if you're thinking about a golf trip and thinking about overall value, pay the big bucks for $160, but then go play Admiral Baker for $40 or Balboa for $40. Like, there's a lot of other courses in San Diego that, are either like good or good enough where you can do a 3 or 4 round golf trip. And, 70% of your budget's going to go to Torrey, but that's fine. So you've said, I guarantee you, if I ask you right now, 10 rounds split up between Admiral Baker and Torrey South, you probably go 8-2 Admiral Baker, right? Like
it'd be like 9-1. I just don't feel like punching my dick over and over again like South does. And actually, to that point, if you do really want to get out and play some holes at Torrey and hit some shots, there is a way that I've heard you can get out there for relatively cheap. I haven't done this yet, so I cannot 100% confirm this is true, but I've been told by golfers that I trust and that I play with down here that if you show up to Torrey Pines early enough, you can pay the twilight rate, whether you're a resident or an out-of-towner, pay the twilight rate, and they'll let you off on the back 9 on the South Course and the North Course, and you can play 9 holes for the twilight rate at 6 o'clock in the morning, while the first tee times off of number 1 play the front before they catch up to the back. So if you have your clubs down here and you just want to go hit some shots at Torrey just to say you do it, take the picture, get the head cover, the hat from the pro shop, that could be an option. I have not done that yet, so I cannot confirm if that's easy to do or if that's even still possible to do. But that's something to look into as a potential option for you too.
Love that suggestion. Well, Nick, thank you for joining. We're going to get you out of here because you got to go pick up your lovely wife.
Oh, she is my life.
And life from work. But dog, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.
Of course, excited to play Torrey with you at some point.
Soon.
Okay. Peace, brother.
Bye.